Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass. My name is Scott Williams. My co-host is Jeff Traylor. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Scott.
Or should I say, hola?
¿Cómo está? I'm out.
Bien.
Oh, bien. I could have done that one.
Padre,
See.
Father Peter Marshall is here.
Hello.
Hello, Father. Where you been?
Spain.
Anything happening?
Spain. That's I assume that's why you're introducing things in Spanish.
What a coincidence.
Right?
But you were in Spain like 24 hours ago.
I was. I got back last night.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing any jet lag?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, which I described to somebody this morning as hyper focus combined with dementia and then a crash.
Yeah.
I feel like
what section are we in right now?
Hyper focus.
Okay.
With dementia, because I'm hyper focused. I'm feeling a little wired, and I can't remember what I wrote down to do next.
Do you think that might just because you're old?
It probably doesn't help.
I was gonna say dementia. I feel like could be you a little bit all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. How's your taxi cab business?
Like the taxis I took.
No, I mean, like I saw your hat on there, so I'm wondering if
I didn't know where you're going.
you're New York taxi driver.
No.
Just
My bald head gets cold. Okay, back off.
I know. I love your hat, and I love I think it's great when you wear it. But I just thought it'd be a funny joke.
Yeah, that landed. That's good.
Shut up.
No, once I got the
Once
punch
you
on
got
it,
it,
that was
yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to learn today.
What? Yeah. My son the other day, it was nacho lunch at school at his school, and I was like, oh man, that's funny. I said, Dominic, I've got the perfect joke for you, and he's in kindergarten, so I had to prep him a lot. But I said, so when they talk about lunch at school, say, and they announce that it's nachos for lunch, raise your hand, ask your teacher, Mrs. Bauman, what kind of lunch isn't yours? And then when she says, I don't know, say nacho lunch. And then he didn't quite get it. So it probably wasn't going to land with the rest of the kindergarten class.
Right.
So I prepped him the whole way to school. And it's like, it's still going to be funny for the teachers. You should do it. I'm enjoying this. I gave him a lot of coaching. We were pulling in for drop off. And I go, all right, do you got it? Say it back to me. And he goes, Dad, I think I just want to learn today.
Which might be the greatest gift you could give a kindergarten teacher is just beating him into submission to learn.
So
learning in school sounds more fun than trying to pull off your joke, Dad.
Yeah. I was trying to give him gold content, and he just didn't pick it up. We'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
All right. We ready for the 2-minute drill?
I've been ready for over a week, Scott.
Yeah.
As anyone who's a regular listener knows, I came very prepared for the Fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time.
Yes.
Last week, when we weren't doing the Fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time, but it's not like it. Luckily, we had like a good regular guest that wasn't anything special, and I wasn't super embarrassed and haven't been thinking about it for the last 7 days.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But you said this was a special Sunday. Why? That's what you said last week when it wasn't a special.
I did. I think I'll hold it. It's the second reading teaser.
Okay.
When we get to the second reading, I'll talk about it.
I am on the edge of my seat.
You're not, but you should be. All right. Our Fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time. Our first reading comes from Deuteronomy. In here, Moses is speaking to. I did that because it was like taught for me.
Well, the quarter's going right over the table. We got tens of YouTube followers now,
visuals,
and it has to look good.
Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan. I know you're a big fan of watching on YouTube. Sorry, I had the cord on there. All right. I can speak to the individuals now. He's going to love that. Anyway, in the first reading, Deuteronomy, Moses is speaking to the people and letting them know that from their kin, from their people, a prophet like him will raise up. But that's what you've requested. This will be. Are you okay?
I'm good now. Yeah.
Your giggles during my 2-minute drills.
Yeah. Thought of something else too.
So he's saying like this prophet will be here. He will command you. He will guide you. It's foreshadowing. We all know how this works. We're heading into the Easter season. We all know what's coming. But he does emphasize, like, if a prophet presumes to speak in my name and I've not asked them to speak, I'm like, there's the combination of there's another prophet coming and they're going to be great and they're going to come from your bloodline and it'll be wonderful. But beware of false prophets too, because other people are going to come and pretend and do that. And then he says, he shall die. So, which I thought is like a pretty, it's like a, hey, watch out for false prophets. If they're doing this, be careful. And then he's like, I will murder them. So, but God will take care of that. Sponsor a psalm, full on banger this week. We got a full banger. It's been a little while
that
since we had
is
a banger.
Banger.
Yeah. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Harden not your hearts. This is, I feel like this has got big time contemporary choir vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a little guitar strumming in the background.
Bell choir.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, it's very, very your home parish with a bell choir.
Whose home parish?
Yours.
Mine.
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, both parishes have bell
Oh,
choirs.
you do?
Yeah, Barnabas does.
Oh, I thought maybe after Linus passed, you wouldn't have a bell choir anymore.
Somebody picked up the bells
Okay.
and kept him going.
All right.
I've often wondered if, like, there's got to be somewhat limited music for bell choirs, and, like, you know, the amount of time and energy that goes into it. Like, I wonder if you could take all bell choirs and the songs that they perform, and, like, basically in like 10 songs, you could cover 99% of bell choirs in the country.
Potentially. But this makes me think that we should have a Central Indiana bell choir
Competition. Can I? Yeah. This is, I'll share my idea. I have a gold idea that I've been rattling around in my brain for a while. Maybe this is the place to manifest it.
Let's go.
But I'll save it for after the 2-minute drill.
Because the second reading is going to be
Because
lit.
we're now in.
Yeah, because we got a big deal.
Yeah.
We've now gone longer than my homily will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a youth thing. Yeah. Yeah, but maybe they'll get a good homily from your deacon or something. So
Wow.
the second reading, I feel like there's never been a reading that better describes the reason we have a podcast than this reading. Like, it is a reading written about busy and distracted Catholics. So in this reading, it talks about an unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord. How may he please the Lord? But a married man, busy and distracted Catholics with families, is anxious about, or a married man is anxious about things of the world, how he may please his wife. He is divided. Like, the whole thing is about, like, in marriage and family, our attention is divided, but being single, your attention apparently doesn't have to be. But I think I don't want to exclude single people. Everybody's attention is divided. I just remember reading this thinking, this is interesting that, like, this whole being distracted and, like, drawn away from the faith and not as focused as we need to be. This goes back to Corinthians. Like,
yeah,
Paul was teaching about this.
Yeah.
Like, yo, it's okay. You've got other things going on, but here's how you focus. He says, I'm telling you this for your own benefit, not to impose restraint, but just so you know, like, try to focus without distraction. I thought it was really great. Sorry, we'll make a t-shirt with this reading on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Just that specific quote.
Hyper focus with dementia.
And then the gospel reading. Our gospel comes from Mark chapter 1,
Brothers
21
and
to
sisters,
28.
did you just get off a plane?
Whoa. Paul was really
He was flying.
sorry. That's Joseph Cupertino. That came after the scriptures. When getting real deep on these references. Mark chapter 1, 21 to 28. Then they came to Capernaum, and on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. The people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as having one authority and not as the scribes. As one having authority and not as the scribes. In their synagogue was a man with an unclean spirit. He cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Jesus rebuked and said, "Quiet, come out of him." The unclean spirit convulsed him, and with a loud cry came out of him. All were amazed and asked one another, "What is this?" A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. His fame spread everywhere throughout the whole region of Galilee. There you go. That wasn't my best reading of the gospel, so my apologies, listeners.
I thought you did
Yeah.
a good job.
Just fine.
Thanks.
And that
Just fine. Just fine is how I feel. Thank you. That was
in
good.
that second summary, second reading summary. I thought that was great.
Thanks.
All right, Father Peter, did Jeff get anything wrong though?
Point out my
No.
heresies.
No, nothing wrong.
Come on,
No,
not even one
sorry.
thing.
Not even one thing.
He pronounced all the words right.
Well, he did stumble on, was Jesus teaching with one authority or as one with authority?
Yeah, but I corrected. I
He
self-corrected.
got it.
Yeah. All right, good.
I also messed up like the grammar in one of the other sentences later in there. I just moved on from it, but
That's all right.
That's what we have to do when we're
I'll get that.
proclaiming it.
Yeah.
Just
My-
do it
my
with confidence.
my wife will let me know about it
Right.
later.
All right,
You will not be distracted.
Father Peter, what are you preaching on this weekend?
So the first reading and the gospel pair very nicely to
Not
bring
a-
about, as Jeff mentioned, who Christ is, right? So we have the Old Testament prophecy that God will send a prophet, a teacher of the voice of God. That's a prophet, is one who speaks the word of God. And that he's foreshadowing, obviously, also the incarnation, right? That this will be a God man, a new thing, one of us, but set apart by God and commissioned by God. And then we see the fulfillment of that in the gospel, right? That this is one who speaks with authority. This is one who can cast out demons. And so it's tightly focused in on Christ the King, the authority of our God and the authority of Jesus. I think there's also a second level in which this is a great weekend for vocations preaching, right? That the priest, and then we bring in the second reading as well, but the priest does not
Be single and undistracted.
right.
Yeah.
Vocation.
The priest does not speak of his own authority, but in the authority of Christ and a descendant authority that Christ has given him to speak in his name. And so the priest becomes in his own way the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy that I am one like you, of you, called forth from the people to speak the word of God with the authority of God. And then Paul sets us up for how we should live, and that is that I ought to be, right? This is the ideal, not the necessarily everyday truth, but I ought to be obsessed with, focused on the things of God and not the things of this world. And so I don't have many of the distractions, as good as those things are, wife, family, job, career, those kinds of things. I'm supposed to be focused on the things of God so that I can speak with the authority of Christ.
Yeah, you have nothing distracting you.
Right.
It's not like we've asked every priest to then run multi-million-dollar organizations and then also hyper focus on God.
Right.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
What so I know, like in the liturgy, like in Eucharistic prayer, you're speaking.
Which one?
What's that?
Which one?
In Eucharistic prayer? Like
Like
which
all of the words of
Eucharistic prayer?
institution.
So like you speak in persona Christi,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
you are speaking, it's your voice, but God is speaking in that moment.
Right.
Is that what you mean when you are talking about authority to speak on behalf of Christ, or is there other instances that you're able to like just minister in that way to be?
Partially. I was listening a couple of weeks ago to an episode of this podcast, and Father Brockmeyer touched on this briefly. Is that a shout out, a clapback? Is that
Callback?
callback?
Clapback.
What's a clapback?
Clapback is when somebody
There's the
disses
dementia.
you and you just go right back at them and you're just that's a clapback.
It was not a clapback. This
No.
positive for
Dementia.
Father James.
Yeah.
Dementia. Here we go.
But all the
A clapback at Father James. Baja Blast is not that good.
in
Sorry.
the sacrament, I'm always speaking the words of Christ. I absolve you, I baptize you,
Yeah.
this is my body, right? So I'm always speaking declaratively as in persona Christi.
Mhm.
but I think also things like preaching. I'm not speaking quite in the same way in persona Christi. I'm not trying to say this is the actual words of Christ, but I'm speaking with the authority given to me by Christ. And so our preaching shouldn't be timid. It shouldn't be afraid. It doesn't, I'm not confusing being a jerk with having authority, right?
Sure.
But that I should be bold in my preaching because this is what Christ has given me.
And you, like, the second you take on your vocation, you put on a collar, you
Right.
step up on the altar, like, people see you as a physical representation of Christ Church here on earth.
Right.
So like a secondary level of like whether it's intentional or meant or not, people do believe that the actions and the words that come from Christ are
absolutely.
the actions and the words of the church and of Christ.
Absolutely.
And again, even if it's a confusion, I know that it's something you have to take really seriously.
Right.
So, I mean, that even at a smaller level, people who are catechists, people who are like
Mhm.
when you work for the church,
Right.
you work in the church, people like that's how people are going to look at you. And if you don't take that seriously, it becomes a big, that can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Are there other areas outside of the Mass where you have authority that a layperson wouldn't necessarily have, or outside of the sacraments? Whether that's like, I don't know, in one-on-one counseling or
Yeah.
like areas where
I think that while we have lay spiritual directors and I support well-trained, gifted lay spiritual directors, I think there is a sense
but
That's what I was like, but
well, I think that my directees view me and what I say as a spiritual director differently
Sure.
than it hits different, right?
Right.
yeah, and I think to maybe to what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it doesn't mean that a lay spiritual director cannot give that same
Right.
but like people hear it different,
Right.
whether they like it or not. And like it's probably a lot harder than to be a lay spiritual director in that sense because
Yeah. And
like
I think too, like just the presence of the collar going into hospitals
collar?
and if I was a good priest and wore a collar, because I keep forgetting that I'm going to be videoed on the podcast.
video.
Yes. Put it on the
I never
videotape.
forget how old I am now.
Yeah, put it on the tape.
Let's play that reel back.
Right.
On the VHS. Yeah.
I didn't say filmed.
That's great.
No, I think yeah, sorry, we got off track
Right.
when you said video. You were talking about the collar.
Right.
So like
So the collar projects an authority, I think, and
oh, it absolutely does.
often a welcoming authority, right? It opens doors for me. It puts people at ease. I have a role that I'm living in that.
I think it's the most visible sign of a like role or responsibility,
Yeah.
maybe in our world.
Yes.
Like it's why every movie that wants to have a religious like very rarely do you see like a Protestant preacher play a religious authority
Right.
in a movie. It's a collar.
Right.
You always see a collar, whether they're even saying the person's Catholic or not. That's what you do so that when somebody walks on screen or they walk into that, there's a recognized religious authority there.
Right.
So yeah.
I was coming back to that second reading. I kept on thinking about how Jeff, talked about the distractions of those two, but I think there's both distractions, but also responsibility. Like I can't not be a father and a husband. Like those are responsibilities, but there's also only so many minutes in a day in a world where we have like live busy and distracted lives. And outside of, and I always try to like get practical tips and tricks. And I think that maybe in seminary or in spiritual direction, you're able to offer that to people. But outside of like, wake up earlier and make sure you devote time to prayer. Are there ways that you see that you can be drawn closer to the spiritual life and closer to God through the work that we do as husbands or parents?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've had to reframe in my own personal life, and Jeff touched on this briefly, is that to reframe budget, for example, as ministry. And so that I don't roll my eyes and groan going into finance council meeting, and I have a great finance council, so that's not a critique of that. But
I was gonna say you better be careful
For all you guys listening from the finance council.
or tighten it up.
so, but to reframe that is not something I have to do in addition to my priestly ministry, but as priestly ministry.
Mhm.
And I think helping fathers and husbands and wives and mothers reframe, oh, this is annoying, but it's an act of service for my spouse. It's an act of service for my kids. It's sanctification for me. It's sanctification for my spouse or kids. Those kinds of reframing to help us enter into what St. Paul talks about, pray without ceasing, right?
Mhm.
That it's not the same as sitting down for contemplative prayer, but it is a prayer. It is or can be a prayer
The
or even worship.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And I give you like some perspective. So, and I think back to like in generations ago, like your family would be with you while you work during the day, or like, you go out farming or you have a store, and like often that was
Right.
more of like a family business. Today, like, Jeff and I, we go to work,
Right.
and we spend all day at work, and we're busting our hump. And this isn't just Jeff and I, like
Complain about our boss.
everybody, yeah, he's a real
Yeah.
butthead.
Makes me do another podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But then like at the end of a hard day of work, you go home and
Do
like
another day of
yeah,
Right.
like and like
Yeah.
it's funny. Elizabeth and I went out on a date last night. We saw a couple of our friends out to dinner, and they have a 18-ish month old, and he's like, he hasn't been sleeping at night, and I got home and I was like pumping myself up on the way home, trying to get jacked up to go home, because I want that experience of my kids to remember me like coming home and playing, and
Right.
not coming home and being exhausted. But his wife had surprised him with like, all right, we're gonna go out to dinner downtown. We're gonna spend the night downtown. Your parents are gonna watch the kids. And he goes, are we gonna sleep tonight?
Right.
Is that like, and I get that feeling of like,
Yeah.
you come home after a long day, you get home, and then it's like, I need to be on for these kids, because
Right.
this is the little bit of amount of time that
Right.
I have with them. And those days are gonna, pass by faster than I can imagine. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, you sit down on the couch, kids go to bed, and then we're just
Right.
exhausted. And I'm trying to figure out ways like, how can we make those moments, while it might be work, but also like sanctifying and like holy.
Right.
And that's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I see it, I can recognize it, but it doesn't feel like prayer. Like, even though it might be you know sanctifying in general, being a parent, it doesn't feel like the spiritual dimension, because I have Hannah like climbing on my
Right.
shoulders. And
I literally saw Scott saying this. His lovely and amazing wife showed me a picture earlier of, and like, I know how hard Scott works at work. I see it. I see him leave exhausted. I see him going to his family. But it was a picture of Scott sitting at the table, and Hannah was like on his shoulders, arms like bear hugging his face and
Right.
head,
yes,
squeezing his head as tight as she could, while Dominic was standing next to him in near tears, trying to like talk to him about something. And I've never been more impressed with like how engaged you were as a
Right.
dad at a moment in like sheer chaos.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
sheer like
but in
and
the midst of that, I was trying to talk to Elizabeth about like a specific and important topic at the dinner table. So like all these things are
Right.
happening at the same time. And I know that's holy, like
But-
those are holy moments.
sorry, I wanted to say that because I'd seen that picture, and I think it
Yeah.
speaks to what you're talking about
It's-
here. Yeah.
Very, very accurate.
I think part of it is, how do you choose to react? Right?
Mhm.
Like, are you choosing to react with patience, with charity, with joy, the fruits of the spirit, right?
Mhm.
And that's sanctifying in itself, the choice to act in the fruits of the spirit instead of the fruits of humanity, right?
Mhm.
So instead of get off me or wait till I'm done talking to mommy or whatever, like to to act
Yeah.
as best as possible is virtuous and is therefore worship and is prayer. Thomas Aquinas says virtus est habitus, virtue is a habit, and which flows both ways, that we grow in virtue as we habitually do the virtue, but that also virtue forms us into being virtuous, right? So, and I think an example here from the priestly life is when you first start to say mass, you're not praying. Like what do I do next? And do I hold my hands out? And, how am I supposed to move and all of this? But gradually that becomes kind of a second nature, and you are able to open your heart and mind more to, I'm praying with the congregation praying, and we get formed in the right way that way.
That's a good way to say that. Virtue is good. What'd you say about habits build virtue? Grace builds virtue?
No.
Habits form virtue?
All of that, except for the grace part.
Habit. What did you
The
say?
grace part,
Habitus.
Virtus est habitus. Yeah.
Virtuous habit.
Yeah.
Virtuous habit. Habit is virtue.
Right.
Virtue is
Think
Yep. Sorry. It's dumb, as Elizabeth would say, dumb movie quote. Yeah, I think, Scott, to what you were saying before, and like what Father's pointing out here with like, how are we bringing the fruits of the Spirit into the acknowledge it? I do think it's one of my favorite things about that reading that Paul wrote, that second reading, is he says in there, like, he's not like negating the fact that those who are married, like, your attention is divided. And he even kind of says, like, I'm not mad.
Right.
Just acknowledge it.
Right.
Just know it and be intentional about it. And that's okay. And like, I apologize.
I forgive you.
It goes to I keep thinking of he must increase, I must decrease. Right. Like that idea of like, God will fill that void for us. He'll fill that as long as we can just get out of our own way.
Right.
Right. And let go of the things of this world. Right. And just say, let me give this to you. Can you please just fill this gap? And sorry, go ahead.
I also think Paul is speaking to husbands and wives and parents here by saying, it's okay. You're not necessarily called to be a mystic. Like you're by using the same word distracted, that you're distracted. A single man is distracted by the things of God, and a married man is distracted by pleasing his wife, right? Like that's intentional there to say, don't worry if you don't have this amazing interior castle spiritual life while you are focused on raising your family. Like, be focused where you ought to be.
Sorry, the book is right there.
The
interior castle.
I've been working with a spiritual director for the last 6 months or so, and one of the things that I hung on to early is that, like, he mentioned that, all prayer should lead to contemplation, and like I tried to work on this, and then the last time we met, I was like, all right, Father, I want to be there. It's hard. I'm not looking for like a cheat code, but is there a fast forward button?
Right.
Like, is there a way that I can get from, like, for me, like when I like go to spend time in prayer or adoration or something like that, it takes about like 15-20 minutes for me to like get all the crap out of my brain.
Right.
And then the way that he responded was like, for me as a priest, I can do this on a regular, but for you as like a married person, I think once a week would be great. And that was just like a huge relief to me to think that it doesn't have to be what I necessarily think it should be. Like I had a false sense of expectation for myself on that, even though like all prayer should lead to but that the lead up time can be longer than.
Absolutely.
I think I heard you doing it earlier, and I think it's something that you and I both do on this podcast, and I recognize it in myself. But like earlier when you were talking about like you come home and like then you're with the kid and and you don't get that time. It's almost like we're asking, like I find us sometimes asking priests like, "Dude, can you just tell me that's okay?"
Right.
Like you
It
tell me
is.
that, like
It's
I
okay.
just like it. Sometimes it doesn't feel okay, but it feels like my only option. I feel like I'm trying to do it, and like
I want comfort or a cheat code. Give
yeah,
me one of the
yes. Either tell me how to like do it better, or tell me like it's okay if that's what you're doing, and like
Right.
I think that's a value.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why it's gotten I created a whole podcast just to validate ourselves. It's great.
Yes. Yes. You can find that on Apple Podcasts or YouTube's. Smash that subscribe
Spotify.
button or Spotify.
Anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Anywhere that you want to hear our voice. Harden not your hearts.
That was
Nice.
good. That was accidental, but really
Nice.
good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Dumb questions.
Yeah. Speaking of validating ourselves. All right.
Yep.
All right, Father. We had a wonderful listener who wrote in some questions. I asked some of them to the Archbishop last week, but I want to ask you
All
some
right.
of these as well.
These are separate from the ones you asked the Archbishop. The same.
Some are like
Okay.
repeated. I just want different answers.
Okay.
He didn't, in all fairness, I tried to ask him some of these questions. He like wouldn't answer them.
Okay.
Like he was very political in his like,
Right.
where it was like, oh, what do you think is the most beautiful church in the Archdiocese? He's like, oh, I can't say that. I
St.
can't.
Joan of Arc.
Yeah, I knew you would have an answer.
Now that they put lights
Disagree,
in it.
but
What do
anyway,
you think?
Sacred Heart.
The ceiling is too much. It's gorgeous, but
you shut your
the ADD in me is just like,
I think it's beautiful. Anyway,
I'll think
sorry
of my
about your wrong
answer.
opinion. What we did ask this question 2 weeks ago to a good friend of yours, Father Tim Wichiscala. Who is your favorite preacher in the Archdiocese?
oh, Father Andy Cyberg.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That was a good quick answer.
Yeah. He's preaching my funeral.
Do you know who Father Tim answered?
No.
You.
Whoa.
And then he named off all the other people he thought were guests on our podcast. He might listen. He's like, who else is on? But his initial answer, I
Okay.
think maybe before he could even like talk him way out of it, was
He's-
Father Peter Marshall.
Father Tim's a very solid preacher too. I never sigh or roll my eyes when I am going to be somewhere and he's preaching.
Yep.
Okay, so you said that he's preaching your funeral.
Father Andy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I miss. Do you have like other things on the list of like requirements for your funeral? And-
Yes.
And where
Ooh,
does
thank-
that file live?
With the Archdiocese.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I put mine there?
No.
No, but you
You
can
can
put it
do
in
it
your
at your
will.
local parish. Most parishes do funeral pre-planning.
I have a document.
Yeah.
I have certain standards.
It's in your will.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I have a
And no on Eagle's Wings.
same.
Did you plan all the songs?
No,
It
but
just
I
says no on
stipulated. Father Jerry Bird is to pick the music.
Oh, that's actually the way to do
Right.
it. 'Cause I was like, otherwise I'll try to put like under the house of the Lord in there or something like we're gonna cross clap at your
Yeah.
funeral. One of mine is that I want the priest to wear black at my funeral.
Yeah,
That's one of my
Yeah.
stipulations.
I have a set. I usually only wear it on All Souls Day.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was the traditional
It
funeral
was.
color.
Yeah.
Rentthesacristy.com.
So I mean, yeah. There's a thing there.
You'd make a fortune if you could figure out quick delivery.
I mean, quick delivery.
Except
Seems like some
everybody
people-
wants black ones on
the
All
same day.
Souls.
Yeah,
All Souls
you
Day.
gotta stock
Need
up.
like 8 sets.
Yeah. Sorry, now my brain's going down there.
Didn't we do a fake commercial on that once?
Did we?
I meant to if we
Oh,
didn't.
maybe. Remember when we were doing those? Man, we should get back.
That was fun.
Those were hilarious.
But
What
okay,
was
so
the-
I asked your favorite church in the Archdiocese, but this was the actual question that came from our listener, Mike Thomas's name. Tell me about interesting crucifixes or images of Jesus that you've seen. Like you've celebrated mass a lot of places, and there's
Right.
a lot of places that have like it's rarely do you go see the same crucifix over and
Right,
over, right? Like
right.
people have very unique
In
ones that
spite of
build
them
churches.
being relatively mass produced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also the something that's very unique is Stations of the Cross typically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which
yes.
I always sorry, that's another story.
His comment was he feels like Our Lady of the Greenwood has what he calls beefy linebacker Jesus,
Right.
which I thought was really funny. And I always love like conversations about like different like, posters of like 70s Jesus
Right.
is a very common one that's out there, stuff like that. What do you think of when you think like unique architecture or statues or things like that around the arch? What do you think of? Good, bad, and different.
So the worst one is not technically in the Archdiocese. It's at Elizabeth Ann Seton in
The worst.
In the Diocese of Lafayette.
in the
Indiana.
Diocese of Lafayette.
Dolan?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I consider it a crucifix.
It's not really.
Oh,
Right.
You know about it? I don't know.
It's like
Oh my, you should, let's take a field trip.
scary barbed wire Jesus on a skateboard.
On a skateboard.
Yeah. Like the cross is kind of,
But it's an
Oh.
awesome parish.
it is a great
Yeah.
parish. Great,
Like-
great parish.
But like Silver Surfer style, like he's flying through the
Little bit,
air. Like
yeah. He's like leaping off of
Yeah.
the crucifix.
that sounds like the one you hear a lot of people
And there's
talk
like a
about.
solar system around his arm.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's
You're making things
no,
up.
it's
No.
very trippy.
If you guys had planned this ahead of time and are trolling, me, I'm so impressed.
Yep.
A lot of people talk about. I think it's Archdiocese of Milwaukee
Oh yeah.
has like a really odd thing
Crown
around
of
the-
thorns
yeah,
over the altar in
Yeah.
the cathedral. Yeah.
with a cross running through
Yeah.
it. And yeah,
Oh,
it's
really?
like a bad,
A-
like a bad
another-
tattoo from the 2000s.
Another terrible image of Jesus that is very familiar is like
The phrase "a terrible image of Jesus."
is in the dome at the National Basilica in DC with Jesus with the red hair, and he's like the god Thor turned into Jesus,
The National
Yeah.
Basilica.
The National Shrine
the National
National
Shrine,
Shrine.
of the
Immaculate
The-
Conception.
Yeah.
the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception of the Washington D.C.
Of was it DC that was immaculately conceived in that scenario?
I made up that last part.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's true.
The any others that are jumping out at you? No. What do you think? I just want to ask you questions that I know you won't be able to resist answering now. That'll put you in a bad spot. Not to put you in a bad spot, but like you had an immediate answer of the most beautiful parish in the
Right.
Archdiocese.
Nope.
No. You won't say it?
I like the two that you mentioned on beautiful churches. I like Sacred Heart. I like Joan of Arc. For the sake of doing another one.
Yeah.
And this is may be contested, but the side chapel at the cathedral is
Oh yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, stunning.
Because it looks like the cathedral used to look.
The probably the most hidden gem in the Archdiocese.
I thought you were going to say hideous, and I was so
No.
excited. Sorry.
Hideous gem of the
is Saint Boniface in Fulda, Indiana.
Mm.
Down by
never
Saint Meinrad.
never been there.
They have the original high altar in Reredos. It's all carved dark wood. It's stunningly beautiful.
All right.
I mean,
Field trip.
it
Who's
is
the
one of those
pastor
things
there?
where like,
Father Anthony Vincent,
Okay.
OSB.
is he at multiple parishes or just at?
Saint Meinrad Parish and Fulda.
And those are archdioceses.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know there's like
Right.
very close
Right.
by. We just carved out St. Meinrad. there.
Yes.
I do think this is one of those things where like larger parishes that have been rebuilt more recently and are newer, people don't associate but like there are, I think half the churches in the archdiocese are these like beautiful,
Yeah.
like, yeah, unfortunately they're just going to continue to like kind of fall apart.
Right.
And like, it's sad, but
Yeah.
anyway, at some point in the 70s, somebody just like made them
Yes.
less pretty. Yeah. All right. You were just in Spain.
Right.
You love Spain.
I do.
See,
Why do you love Spain? Of all the places, like I know you love to travel, you
Right.
like going places, but I also know you well enough to know you always draw to there.
So I think part of it is everything people love about Italy, more or less, can be found in Spain. But when I'm in Italy, I'm always working. Like I'm taking a group to Rome, I'm showing people around, I'm responsible, I'm stressed over, is everybody having a good time? Is everybody safe? Is everybody, I can go to Spain and have the sunshine and the relaxed, laid back kind of lifestyle and the good wine, and I'm not responsible for anybody. I can actually be on vacation in
Which-
the beautiful history.
Which you could do in Italy, but you're saying like
I just
it
never
still
did.
draws your mind to like
Right.
even if you were there on your own, you're still
Right.
thinking about
Right.
those other yeah.
And
okay.
I've led so many groups around Rome at this point that
Yeah.
I'm like,
You've seen it.
I've seen it.
All
It still
all-
moves me. It's
all
still beautiful,
368 parishes, churches.
but I wouldn't go that far. But
The All Set for Sunday pilgrimage.
To all parish,
too
every parish.
300, led by
I've-
Father Peter Marshall.
No, he doesn't want to go there.
You
Yeah,
wouldn't
I'll
go to
do it.
those?
Yeah, I'll do it.
It's just us and the priests who are on the podcast.
Right.
All right.
Actually, if we did that, I'll bet we could get a whole group of people to go.
Have you ever been to Rome with Father Meyer?
No, but I
It's
think Father
scary.
Peter's out if you say,
Yeah.
Like, it's
He-
scary.
It's too much.
He walks so
I
fast.
can't do it.
No mas, no mas.
I am an old fat man. I cannot.
He was like, "We're going to all 4 major basilicas in 2 days. We're going to eat at all the restaurants. Follow
Right.
me through all the back alleys. We're going to sprint."
Right.
And
It's crazy.
but
I
awesome.
was gonna say the second you said that, I saw Father Peter be like, I think I'm busy.
Right.
Speaking of busy,
And I was
distracted.
Yeah.
20 years younger when I did that with him, and it was still too much.
Yeah. And Father Tim used to live there, so we
Yeah.
know
yeah. I didn't. Did you know that?
I-
He studied over there.
he
Has he ever
it.
mentioned it?
He mentioned to me once.
It was actually mentioned by this listener who wrote in. He said, "Did you know Father Tim studied in Rome for 3 years?" That's what I like when our guests get.
You have the
just-
best listeners.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. I had another. Maybe I didn't have another question here for you.
That's okay. We have.
You want to hear my golden idea? I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
get to
yeah,
share
yeah.
this. Here's my golden idea. I think it is hard to find a church that doesn't feel like their choir is like the best, right? Like I love that. It's a unique thing that people love. People have like very strong feelings about their music and their choirs and their performances, and
Mhm.
they do these, these Christmas celebrations, and everybody comes and they're like, "Oh, ours is the best." I think we should start doing some competitions amongst these choir, like liturgical
Yeah.
choir competitions. Like I often, when I was at Roncalli, I wanted to do this, like at South Deanery, invite in all the choirs, and you have categories. You got your contemporary choir, you got do the competition.
put like
give
a
it
bracket up, different
Yeah, yeah,
divisions based
yeah,
on
yeah.
deaneries.
Yeah, and then you like bring in people from outside to come like score it and do it and everything, and then you have winners. But you sell tickets because the people will come
Right.
watch this thing, and you do it all for like a charitable cause. Like
Yeah.
so every year that's raising money for a different thing. And the pushback I got, because I talked to some people about this, like, what could we pull this off? And everybody was like, it will get so cutthroat.
It will.
People will get so angry.
I'm in.
And like, I know
I'm in.
we should sponsor this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the one thing we don't have in the church is like division.
Yeah.
But also like, yeah, I think it would get cutthroat because nobody ever says our choir's all right.
Right.
Like nobody would ever tell them that.
No.
Right. Like they're
No.
like, oh my gosh, we're
Right.
gonna applaud for you every time mass
Right.
happens and you play music and you
Not
do-
at St. Jude. We don't applaud.
Ah, thank you.
I've seen
They-
some that are not great.
I know, but you wouldn't say it to their face.
Oh, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. No applauding at mass. We've talked about it on here
Yeah.
before, but my kids know. You only applaud if father starts a coughing.
Right.
But if we're gonna applaud for musicians, we better start applauding during the consecration.
Right.
Because like there's a miracle happening. And I'm on board if we're all like, yeah.
Yes.
But anyway.
All right.
All right.
That's all the time we got.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's actually a podcast. We can keep going if
Right.
you guys want to.
I gotta go. I gotta go.
But it's I think we should wrap it there. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Appreciate
This
you
was
coming.
great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for bringing your dementia
Right.
to our podcast.